Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Kris. This is just one of those videos that popped up on my feed. The documentary that exposed a genocide. Let me brag about the crimes they committed. The documentary, The Act of Killing, exposed a regime in Indonesia that functions exactly like this. I don't know. I've never seen it. So we're about to find out the history of Iran, a primer. Okay. If you can click that thumbs up, subscribe, there's a hype button, and then you can click on the thanks, donate to the channel if you want to. Okay? All support helps, even if it's just the thumbs up. Let's see what this video is about.
Like the majority of the world, I found out about the Indonesian mass killings in 2013 when I saw The Act of Killing for the first time. I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that this is the greatest documentary I've ever seen, not only because it exposed a genocide, but because of the way it did it. Instead of talking head interviews and archival footage, The Act of Killing goes undercover, so to speak, and collaborates directly with perpetrators of these crimes, asking them to reenact their killings in whatever way they wish. The result is the creation of a new reality, a kind of fever dream orchestrated.
What was that? Not that.
The result is the.
What the hell is that? Is that like just a walking bridge, and they just made a fish out of it?
Creation of a new reality, a kind of fever dream orchestrated by the perpetrators themselves. And this new reality reveals both literal and psychological truths that would have otherwise been buried by layers and layers of lies and corruption and justifications. There's a lot to unpack here, so let's start at the beginning. How did director Joshua Oppenheimer, who was at the time a completely unknown filmmaker from Texas, end up collaborating with perpetrators of a genocide in Indonesia? In 2001, Oppenheimer and filmmaker Christine Sin set out for Sumatra, Indonesia, with the hope of improving working conditions on a Belgian-owned palm oil plantation. They brought camera equipment and taught the workers how to film. The result was a documentary called The Globalization Tapes. As he got to know the workers on this plantation, it became clear that they were living in truly atrocious conditions, and that these conditions were a symptom of something pervasive across the entire country.
The company would have the women workers spray a weed killer around the palm trees, the oil palm trees, and with no protective clothing, no masks, no gloves, the mist would go into their lungs, then into their bloodstreams, and destroy their liver tissue. And the women were dying in their 40s. And when they would complain to the company petitioning for protective clothing, the company would hire thugs from a movement called Pancasila Youth that had in fact been involved with the killings in 1965. They'd hire thugs to threaten and sometimes attack the women. And the women were easily intimidated, easily threatened, because their parents and grandparents had been in a union until 1965, had been accused of being communist sympathizers simply because they were in a union and had been killed. They were afraid this could happen again.
The Rubber Workers Union was communist-run, so after the coup, many of them were killed or imprisoned. Some of the survivors, you see them here, still work the rubber, but this time as prisoners and at gunpoint. The different islands deal with the communist survivors in various ways. In some camps, they are starved to death or released periodically to be killed by the local citizens. Ted Yates, NBC News, reporting.
Kenapa, Pak? Keturunan dan juga keluarga PKI yang dibunuh tidak pernah melakukan balas dendam, Pak?
Sampai saat sekarang, mereka bukan tidak mau membalas dendam. belum ada kesempatan mereka untuk
Ya, kita akan basmi semuanya.
After stumbling into this society where genocide had been effective and the perpetrators were still in power, Oppenheimer came to a realization.
Normally, perpetrators of mass violence win. That's why they do it, because it's effective. They write victors' history, celebrating what they've done. They glorify it. We as human beings deceive ourselves about the meaning of our actions, and I knew at that point I would spend as many years as it would take to address this situation.
And many years it did take, roughly a decade. Because once he set his mind on making this film, he immediately ran into a problem. How do you make a film about crimes against humanity when the perpetrators are still in power?
The army threatened all of the survivors not to participate in the film. And everybody said, don't quit, don't go home, don't give up, try to film the perpetrators. See if they will tell you how they killed our relatives. I was afraid to do that at first, but when I did, I found...
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You would hope that the people are so far from committing violence. You know, of course, you hold on to power through violence, but maybe if the people become, I hate to say it, I have a lot of words that are flying through my head, but they just kind of become adjusted to the situation, the life, and the chances of, if we rebel, I could be punished, I could be killed. My relatives who had nothing to do with it, maybe don't want me to do it, could be hurt, could be killed. You hope that the people in charge, that threat makes them a little tamer, just because, you know, fat cats get fat and eventually they relax, and that's what you hope happens. But yeah, you're not dealing with the same people, you know, 30 years ago. They're older, they're more docile, I guess you could say.
Found really to my horror that all of them were immediately boastful about the worst details of the killings, which they would recount with smiles on their faces in front of their wives and their children, even their small grandchildren. Then they would usually invite me to where they killed if they were imaginative enough to do so. They'd bring along weapons to use as props. They'd bring friends to play victims and reenact it, figuring that it's a film. They should show what they did, not just tell about it.
These impromptu performances by the perpetrators sparked an idea in Oppenheimer, an idea that reveals his approach to filmmaking and his ultimate goal in making the act of killing.
I started with this premise. I said, okay, you've participated in one of the biggest killings in human history. I could be that open with them because they were that open with me. I want to know what it means to you and to your society. You want to show me what you've done, so show me what you've done in whatever way you wish. I will film the process, but I will film your reenactments, but I will also film you and your friends talking about what you want to show, what you don't want to show, and combine these things to create a documentary of the imagination.
He creates the environment in which the inner dreams and desires and justifications of a perpetrator can be made visible. It's not about what happened in 1965 per se, it's about how the perpetrators want to be seen today and how they see themselves.
I think documentary in English implies this kind of transparent window onto a pre-existing world that you document. And I think that's not, I see my films as interventions that I make in collaboration with other people, that I feel like whenever we film anybody, we are creating reality. And a fly-on-the-wall documentary, a so-called fly-on-the-wall documentary, simply is a collaboration between filmmaker and subject where they create a reality in which they pretend the camera's not present.
I don't think it's a coincidence that Oppenheimer studied theoretical physics before he switched to filmmaking, and not just because his name is Oppenheimer. The way that he describes this collaboration between the filmmaker and the subject feels analogous to the measurement problem in quantum physics. When particles are not being observed, they behave like a wave. But as soon as they're observed, they take on definite values in the form of individual particles. Similarly, as much as a filmmaker might want to document reality as it really is, a person's behavior will inevitably change if they are being observed by a camera. And so the goal isn't to pretend the camera doesn't exist, but to create an environment that will allow the subject to play the character that they want to play.
The great moments in nonfiction cinema always happen when you create a context, an occasion, together with your participants, where they're put in a situation which is safe, because otherwise you would hopefully not do it, somehow safe, but takes them out of their comfort zone and puts everybody somehow out of control.
So how does Oppenheimer do this? First, he chose one perpetrator, Anwar Congo, and hyper-focused on him, delving deeper and deeper into his psychology. Anwar doesn't have any particular significance in the grand scheme of things. He's just one of many low-level gangsters who were hired to carry out the killings. In fact, Oppenheimer had filmed for 2 years with 40 other perpetrators before he ever met Anwar.
The 41st perpetrator I filmed was Anwar Congo, the main character in the act of killing. I met him at the end of that 2-year period. I lingered on him because his pain was right there on the surface. I saw that trauma, he was immediately talking about trauma and fear of ghosts. The first day I met him is the day he took me to the roof and dances the cha-cha-cha. It's a
fear of ghosts. Do you think that there's any kind of remorse for what he did, but he can't show that? That's why he's doing the cha-cha-cha. He's showing that he's happy because this is the time that he can put on that fake smile, but inside there's just remorse for everything that was done. I'm just wondering, because you got to put on. No one wants to look back and say everything I did was wrong, because you've lived that for so long. You put on a smile and you hope no one questions it, and you move on.
Key scene at the beginning of the act of killing. He dances the cha-cha-cha in the spot where he's killed hundreds of people. And yet he says he does so in order to dispel, to banish the pain that he's just felt by talking about what he did. He says, if I talk about this, it'll make me crazy. So to forget all this, I've been going out drinking, taking drugs, dancing, look, I'll show you. And that was the first time I realized that the boasting isn't a sign of pride, but something else, something defensive, a desperate attempt to convince oneself that what one did was right and justified.
Oppenheimer kept filming with Anwar for the next 5 years, encouraging him to continue reenacting the killings in whatever way he wished. And most importantly, he would show the footage back to Anwar.
It was a very simple method. We would shoot one scene, I would screen it back for Anwar. He would respond emotionally and then propose the next scene in response to the previous scenes.
The result is a nightmarish journey into the psyche of someone who has killed hundreds and possibly thousands of people in grotesque and painful ways. But instead of portraying Anwar as a monster, he becomes humanized. And the film as a whole seems to argue the case that any human, given the right circumstances, is capable of committing horrible acts of evil, and that in order to commit these acts, one must find a way to justify them to oneself. Anwar's friend...
That's an excellent point. You're capable of doing anything if you can justify it in terms of, if I didn't, they would kill me. If I didn't, they were going to kill my family. If I didn't, this country was going to be overrun by communists or capitalists or socialists. You can justify anything. Does it make it right? No. But a lot of times, it will come down to, if I didn't, they were going to insert whatever.
And fellow executioner, Audi, says it best.
Sekarang Misalnya bahwa kasih mati orang itu kan perbuatan salah yang paling berat sebetulnya. Tapi bagaimana kita membuat cara supaya kita tidak merasa berbuat salah. Kita mesti meyakini satu alasan yang tepat. Jadi misalnya
After the killings, the Indonesian government created a propaganda film depicting communists as bloodthirsty and evil, and required all students, from first grade to adults, to watch it once a year. Anwar cites this film as one of the justifications that helped him live with his crimes.
Nah, tentunya saya ingin tahu pendapat Bapak mengenai film pengkhianatan G30 SPKI yang terkenal di seluruh Indonesia.
Kalau saya itulah film itu salah satu yang menghilangkan rasa takut buat saya.
But in reality, he was the one who was violent, not his victims. And only a little prodding causes this justification to collapse.
Kalau kau begitu ya?
Iya.
Kalau aku ada koreksi-koreksi, kenapa begini, gitu. PKI kalau udah kalah, jahanam lah dia. Betul. Kan begitu. Jadinya semua lah disetel, lagu genjer-genjer.
Karena
gerwaninya tarik telanjang ini segala macam. Itu yang kita pertanyakan. Apa memang begitu?
As Anwar puts himself in the shoes of his victims and
wow, that guy's saying that the propaganda film is a lie. Didn't expect to hear that.
Feels just a fraction of the fear and powerlessness that they felt, he becomes more and more desperate for a new justification, something to ease the guilt and allow him to sleep at night.
Nggak bisa diulangi. Nggak bisa dua kali. Apakah
he couldn't put himself in that situation? That says a lot. I think, yeah. Do the people I tortured feel the way I do here? Did the people I tortured feel it? Yeah, I would say there's a fear.
orang yang kusiksa dulu itu rasanya seperti aku begini? Nah, itulah dia. Tapi aku dapat merasakan ya perasaan mereka yang disiksa.
Jelas apa yang dirasakan orang yang disiksa Bang Noir jauh lebih buruk dari ini. Karena Bang Noir tahu ini hanya film. Mereka tahu bahwa mereka akan dibunuh.
Tapi saya merasakan ya, benar-benar saya rasakan.
I believe him. I really do believe him because I when he was dancing the cha-cha, you're hiding so much. You're just trying to keep that stuff down in. And it's too bad.
Atau saya itu apa dosa sama saya? Banyak ya manusia yang pernah saya begini gitu ya. Apakah ini kembali dia kepada saya?
In response to these feelings of guilt and possibly a fear of some kind of karmic punishment, he films a completely absurd scene where, in the afterlife, his victims give him a medal and thank him for killing them because they were sent to heaven. Once he was no longer able to dehumanize them, he needed to find another justification for what he had done, no matter how absurd and illogical. As I mentioned before, this film is not pretending to be a window into reality. It's a collaboration with Anwar, and Anwar is presenting to the audience how he wants to be seen. He wants you to like him. He wants to be a sympathetic character. But he also can't square what he's done with the character he's presenting.
Saya tahu bahwa saya kerjaan itu salah, tapi saya harus melaksanakannya.
It's as if the reality of what he's done bubbles to the surface, and his body wants to expel it. And this is the moment where the character that he's been presenting collides with reality, and a core truth is revealed: that he caused unnecessary suffering, and there's no justification for it. It's easy for people in positions of power to justify their involvement in this genocide. They can say it was for a greater cause, the communists needed to be stopped, and so on. But this film addresses the actual act of killing, the character a person must play in order to torture and kill another human.
Kenapa harus saya habiskan? Kami harus mematikan. Hati nurani saya yang mengatakan harus dihabiskan.
Man. That guy is... I feel bad for the guy, but in the same time, it's kind of like you reap what you sow, and he killed a lot of people. And I don't know. I hope you can make peace with that, because I don't think you're getting a medal in the next life, or thanks. Hundreds or thousands of people, it said. Good Lord. Okay, well, we're going to end this here. I have no interest in watching that documentary. Knowing what it's about, I will pass. So, until next time, have a good day, have a good night.